Parul University warmly welcomes a distinguished global academic leader under the Scientific Communication Outreach and Public Engagement (SCOPE) initiative as part of the Mentor-Mentee M² program. We are honored to host Professor Dr. Gorazd Meško, head of the Criminology chair at the Faculty of Criminal Justice and Security, University of Maribor, Slovenia, a globally recognized institution ranked in the QS World University Rankings, 901 to 950. An internationally respected scholar, Professor Meško specializes in rural criminology, community policing, local safety and security, penology, environmental and water crimes, and cybercrime. Let us begin today's podcast by welcoming Professor Dr. Gorazd Meško and dive into an insightful conversation on criminology, research, and global perspectives in justice and security.
Jai Shri Krishna, Namaskaram, and welcome again to yet another podcast with a very interesting person we have here today with us, Professor Gorazd Meško. He is an experienced criminologist, very intelligent and talented at his field of work. He's worked for over 2 decades as a policeman and has been a professor for another 20 years or so in the field of criminology. And it was my good fortune to come across him and discuss with him several aspects pertaining to criminology, since I've been very interested in the field as well. It's always morbidly, it's also a very ghastly field, but at the same time, there is some sort of morbid curiosity to understand why humans commit crime and how we can prevent it. So our interests converged and we had quite a few very interesting conversations, and we'd like to share those with you today and possibly much more from his wealth of knowledge. So he is a professor at the University of Maribor in Slovenia, and his experience as a policeman I think is very relevant to our conversation as well. So welcome, Professor G. And the first thing I wanted to ask you, considering you worked with the police and with criminals directly, hardcore criminals, for several years, what are some traits you've observed when you've seen them, and over a period of time there must be some sort of pattern recognition. If you could help the viewers understand what the traits and behaviors could be of criminals so they can keep themselves safe, at least to an extent.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. It's very difficult to generalize opinion about offenders. Mm-hmm. But if we talk about property criminals, then we have different reasons for committing these crimes, because some of them are impulsive, some of them are greedy,
yes,
and some of them actually follow under the influence of their peers and so on. If we talk about violence, it's about self-control, it's about the belief that violence pays, and sometimes it's related to so-called masculine culture of expressive violence towards others, and so on. We can also talk about organized crime, where it's a mix of activities,
yes,
which can be considered like a business, and they use violence and intimidation to achieve their goals. And in the latter activity, actually the main idea is to make profit. Yeah. So we
the different categories.
Yeah, different categories. We can talk about people who are under huge pressure. Yeah, that's one of the theories, emphasizes the role of strain,
yes,
or stress on people,
yes,
and their reactions to stress in society. So the majority of people actually are conform to values and norms and so on. And then we have people who react in different ways. So we have people who actually adapt to these new situations, and they follow some innovations and try to make some profit out of that, of course, with criminal activities.
True.
We have people who follow some rituals, and sometimes they become victims, sometimes they victimize others, and so on. We have people who actually are tired, or the main characteristic is despair. So it is related to all kinds of crimes of despair, and which actually sometimes look like crimes of revenge and so on, but it's actually the final resort. Actually, they take. And we have people who decide to be revolutionary and try to change social order or change the value system and so on, and they
end up
use violence and all kinds of illegal behavior.
Yes.
It's very difficult to profile offenders.
Yes.
Because sometimes people look, you said normal, I would say just like other common people, you know.
Other common people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's impossible to say, a person with this kind of face or this kind of
that's
color
of
skin and so on is a potential criminal, because that's not good, you know. It's not true. But there are some psychological characteristics which are typical for some offenders. One of them is impulsiveness, you know, lack of self-control, hasty conclusions, and there also could be this behavior could be combined with the peer support or peer pressure. We have pull and push factors and so on. And we also have protective factors on the other side, because some people have aptitude to deviance, but they live in good environments. They are surrounded by law-abiding people of noble values and so on. And if they treat those people well, they usually do not commit criminal offenses. Yeah, and but it's very difficult to say, you know, generally we can.
Yeah, you cannot just simply categorize.
No, we cannot, because if we simply take a look at the criminal code, if we talk about violence, then we talk about property crimes. We also have white-collar crimes, which actually cannot be described with the same theories as the majority of, I would say, everyday crimes, or the crimes which are mostly recorded in the police statistics. So, just an example, you know, I remember the case of violence in schools. So, typical attribution of this kind of deviance was that children from poor families do that, children from socially marginalized families are violent in schools. But I remember this case where the children who did it were actually children from well-off families, families of actually from the families where parents were pillars of their communities and so on. And so we could talk about two different perspectives. So, you know, where socially excluded and marginalized children do that, it's a kind of a call for help, because it's the only way they can prove themselves, you know, to be worthy and so on, because violence is sometimes expressed because people need a kind of recognition.
That's how many gangs started.
Yes, so that's it. And on the other hand, in this case, when we had these children from higher social classes, they actually were bored. So that's the boredom was the main factor of their deviant activities. And actually they also their motive was to show the place of other school friends, they wanted to put them on the right place, as they said, you know. So you belong there, you're not worthy to be a member of our small community, and we can do to you whatever you want. So that was these are two different perspectives. And and when we talk about, for example, sexual crimes or crimes against the body and limb and so on, then we can see that motives actually can go to some subconscious areas of human thinking and perception of life, and especially emotions of people.
Makes sense. So what inspired you to be a criminologist after your career of being a policeman? Or rather, what inspired you to be a policeman in the first place? We can go from there.
I became a police officer by coincidence.
Okay.
I actually wanted to be an electrician.
Okay.
I was already accepted to this high school, you know, for electricians. And I had a very good friend whom I met in the center of the city where I lived as a child. And he had something in his hands and said, what is this? And he said, you know, those are the forms, you know, application forms for the police cadet school.
Okay.
Yeah, and said, okay, are you going to go to the police cadet school?
Okay.
And he said, yes, I'm going to apply today. I'm going to the police station and I will submit this application. I said, okay, if you go, I will go too.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was a pure coincidence. And there was something what actually was not so good for him. I was accepted and he wasn't.
Okay. I see.
So, and then after I completed the police cadet school, I worked as a village police officer and I made a career in the police force. And I was a BA student and I was quite diligent and I completed part-time studies in 4 years, which was about the same time regular students do. And then I had a talk with my director of the police training center, and he said, I think you should go to work at the university, or it was actually the Higher School of Internal Affairs at the time. And he said, this would be a good option for you because I see that you have some potential and why not?
Interesting. So what are some of the top 3, say, experiences that you garnered during your tenure as a police officer that are very insightful about, say, criminals in general? Anything that you personally experienced and saw?
Yeah, so...
especially, in terms of, have you seen any criminal actually reforming under your watch?
That's very difficult to say, because I actually didn't think much about it at the time. But what I'm very proud of is that I had quite a high clear up rate in investigating crimes. I never liked doing traffic policing or fining people for traffic offenses. Because if you do criminal investigation, then you have to work with people and they can be very sensitive if you find them for all kinds of offenses. But instead of that, I created so-called protective networks, and I did all kinds of activities. I remember several cases. One of the cases was investigation of serial robberies, post robberies, and by coincidence, those guys who committed those robberies were actually my fellow sportsmen in the local gym. I didn't know them, but then actually I learned afterwards. So and they committed many robberies. So we investigated those crimes. At the end, we actually apprehended them, and they got long imprisonment. One of them I think got 15 years, and that was quite serious then. And from the perspective of your first question about these traits and the context of growing up and so on, I would say that all of them actually belong to quite stable families with some specifics, but you never know actually what happens in those families. Because also familiar relationship actually matter a lot, and we don't know whether they had what kind of behavior was typical for their fathers and mothers and so on, but something was very typical. They actually robbed the majority of post offices in the region, except the one where one of the gang members' mother was a head officer in that post. So that was quite evident. So this was one of the cases, and another case was a case of domestic violence, because it was before 1985. When children's rights and family protection programs were actually promoted globally. But you probably know people have different kinds of attitudes about domestic violence.
Yeah.
So some people actually normalize it.
Pathetic.
Yeah. And some people actually are allergic to this kind of behavior,
Yes,
because they hate it, because it's very humiliating. It's about children. It's about it's actually behavior which goes against all the values which actually mean something important in society.
Yes.
And it was a case of a guy who usually came home drunk, and he was verbally violent, then he was physically violent. But his wife actually was never willing to report any violence.
That's the problem.
Even if the neighbors heard children screaming and so. But I said, okay, I will talk to him anyway. And I said, okay, my dear offender, you're already offender for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
You are now under my watch.
Very good.
Yeah. So, and I said, I have told every neighbor around you.
Ah.
That was before we had mobile phones.
Yes,
There was no mobile phones then. And so,
when is this?
in the 80s.
80s.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the 80s. And we had landline phones, regular old-style phones.
Exactly.
And I said, I gave my home phone number to all your neighbors, and if somebody will hear something unusual, they will call me. Yeah, they would call me, and I will be there in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Whether I am at work or not.
Yes.
So, and I also gave them the number of the police station and so on. And eventually, he stopped doing it. Yeah, but the main problem in this case was that we couldn't prove him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to have solid evidence. You have to have people who see it and hear it and go, to the court and are witnesses. And so this was the second one, which actually I was very happy that violence stopped.
Yes,
and there was also a case which had nothing to do with criminal activity, but it had to do with the protection of children. Yeah, we had some families in my area, policing area, families of alcoholics. Father and mothers were alcoholics, and they treated their children badly.
Fathers and mothers.
And mothers, both, yes. And it's very sad if you have a 12 or 13-year-old son or daughter, and they have to take care of their parents. Yeah. It looks
pathetic.
very sad. It's pathetic. It's naturally children shouldn't be.
No child should have to do that. Yeah?
Absolutely, because in this case, parents were like children, and children behaved like parents. And I had many conversations with social workers and others, also with the local priest and so on. And we finally, I would say, saved the children.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was very lucky because I predicted something. I said,
wonderful.
we need to provide these kids with safe environment. That was the work of social workers afterwards. But still, if you work in a rural area, you are both, police officer, social worker, you're a teacher, you're a friend, you're older brother, all kinds of roles you play. And those kids completed high school.
Yes.
Did everything to become quite happy people later on.
Wonderful.
Yeah? But it's still sad if you see your parents, drinking on a daily basis, and it's really sad and bad. Yeah.
I agree. Absolutely. I think that's very valuable information, because civil disorder begins at home, and families play a huge role in shaping society, because they are the founding blocks of society. So I think that's really helpful. So what would be your advice for, say, the Indian police system? Here in our government, I'm also happy to know that they've started a lot of initiatives like this, wherein a police officer acts as a brother, a guide, and in some villages, the older sister. So it's happening, but not everywhere. So what would be your suggestion and advice to families in India and to villages and police officers as well? What can we do and even to the government, what can we do to prevent domestic violence and child abuse within families? It's rampant.
So I visited 3 places so far here in India, and I was very happy to learn about a variety of programs in Bhopal.
Bhopal, very good.
For the protection of children from completely disadvantaged families. Yes, and that is something what the state should provide to every kid.
Yes.
Because in this project the main role is played by social services and the police in cooperation with non-governmental organizations, which is also good. But NGOs in this field are usually the extended arm of social services, because there is not enough social workers and other professionals who could help those children and families. Regarding domestic violence, there should be zero tolerance. Zero tolerance.
Yes.
Because in victimology we know a saying which is victims victimize. And if you have children who have been victimized by their parents, they will likely victimize others in the future. So because they follow the same pattern. And sometimes the more they avoid this pattern, the more they're sucked into this kind of behavior.
Absolutely.
There must be very strong programs for the protection of children. And we know that state interventions or non-governmental interventions, I would say the potential or capacity, are not evenly distributed all over the country. It doesn't happen anywhere,
True.
They're usually located in centers. They're very rarely distributed to distant rural areas or in the areas where many problems occur on a daily basis, except those problems actually become a kind of pandemic, or endemic, because then you have to take action. But before this critical point, reaction is usually zero. There's no reaction. And then they try to correct it or repair it as soon as possible, but it's usually too late. There's also something what really matters, when we talk about preventative activities and we talk about different age groups. Prevention always pays when it's about children. So the government has to provide children with the highest possible services. The children are actually very vulnerable. It's the same. We have another category of people who are also very vulnerable. That's the senior people. And people with special needs. And how the state, the governments, and society in general treats those people, it actually shows a kind of a level of humanity.
Yes, absolutely. So, lastly, since we're speaking today in India, of course, crime is a global thing. And since we're speaking in India now, one of the biggest problems we experience on a day-to-day basis is the pervasive corruption. Right? A lot of countries have corruption at higher levels, but in India, the problem is it's pervasive. It's everywhere. Everyone experiences it. And yet, even though we all know it is happening, we are not able to get rid of it from our society. So if you were to advise the government, what would you do, say, if you wanted to rapidly eradicate it or at least cut it down by 60-70%? We need that to happen, because without that, there's not enough capital that we can dedicate and allocate. We can't dedicate quality services to children, as you mentioned, and everything else is limited by this one huge factor. So what would you recommend to resolve this?
I would also introduce zero tolerance policies. And try to improve integrity, especially of public officials. And this is very important. Why is this so important? Because if you want to have real democracy, and follow the rule of law, and respect human rights and people's dignity, then corruption is one of the problems which actually reduces the power of the state, the power of economy, and it actually introduces completely wrong values, because it's not about meritocracy, but it's about bribing people. It's about achieving goals by giving some presents, by doing something what is not okay. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and there are different levels of corruption, and if it's pervasive, if it's in every activity, then you have to take very, very serious actions. But it cannot happen overnight, because if this kind of behavior is normalized, then you have to denormalize it. Yeah, and messages about corruption, actually anti-corruption, must come from the top.
Must come from the top.
Yeah,
Yes.
and those people must be role models for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we end today's session, it was very insightful. I'd like you to give a short message to our viewers, especially the youth, about what they can do for this country and how they should think, how they should act to make it a beautiful society.
So first of all, I believe in young people who are the future of every nation. And it's really up to them to require from the older people to take care of them, to provide them with better quality of life, high quality of services, that they could improve the quality of the present services and ways of life in the future. And I would recommend that it's not worth to self-humiliate and become apathetic and so on, or fall into this popular culture which actually takes you away from the real problems and real challenges in the society. And I believe that you have enough young people who are energetic, who are willing to do something good for your society, and they are willing to learn from the elderly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to consume their wisdom and knowledge, and build new foundations of your society.
Very true, very true. So thank you so much again, Gorazd. It was wonderful speaking, and lots of insights and over our conversations the last few days. And today, I think you put it very beautifully. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you very much.